Buy your home.
Fit, active, healthy, happy, enjoying the prime of your life. Looking out for your health and wellness, this is Health Talk with Fred Lowry from Lowry Drug in Statesville. Call now to ask Fred your health questions. 704-873-1400. 704-873-1400. You can also visit Fred at his store, conveniently located on Hartness Road in Statesville.
Hey, good morning. This is Bryan Starrette here on October the 12th, I believe. I see it right there. It's 8:06 here in the morning here at News Talk WSIC. And I'll mean one thing on a Monday morning. It's time for Health Talk with Fred Lowry, Lowry Drug, Advanced Health and Wellness. And I'm going to wait a little bit here this morning. I usually have my intro. I go over. Lowry Drug is your hometown medical equipment and medical supplier store right here. Free delivery here in Statesville. And you can call Fred and see Fred here on Hartness Road right across from Iredell Health System here in downtown Statesville. So, Fred, good morning, sir. How are you doing?
I'm well.
Good to have you here. I want to thank you for coming on this morning and giving us good news about Health Talk. If you have any questions for Fred, you can call in today on the show at 704-873-1400, 704-873-1400. All things COVID, perhaps, or more, and more.
You know, as we're moving into this, continuing to move in the environment that we're in, fear is a great motivator.
Right.
Maybe the greatest motivator. And so it's particularly important when it comes to healthcare decisions, because, it's the what if and it's the double-edged sword. Because if, as an example, if you to vaccinate or not to vaccinate, you're afraid of what might happen if you don't, but you're also afraid of possible issues of side effects. So I wanted to talk about the history of medical liability with vaccinations. And there's a documentary out recently, the 1986, the Act, which is referring to the National Childhood Vaccination Injury Act of 1986 and how it came into being. So, basically the vaccine companies don't have any medical liability for product liability, that rests with the government. And, with the COVID pandemic, all medical personnel were relieved from any kind of liability in the treatment of the COVID virus. So in some cases, I mean, obviously that's I think fair from the aspect of you're treating something that's seemingly new, it's uncharted territory. The healthcare providers that are out there are doing their best. They're trying to take care of people. Hopefully that's the case. And so we don't want to sue them for trying to help someone, especially in uncharted territory.
Right.
So some of this came years ago with what's known as the Wakefilled controversy, which this was an English physician, a surgeon, also a gastroenterologist that led a research team, and he was interested in inflammatory bowel disease. So things happening to the gut, and there is a gut-brain connection. Some people may be familiar with, but he was looking into possible viral origins of Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis in relationship to the measles virus. And so they came out with a connection there, and in 1995 they published a paper. It was he and 12 other physicians that came out with this. After that, a mother called him and said she had a child that was developing normally, and he had his MMR vaccine, and it turned into
MMR. What's
measles, mumps, and rubella.
Oh, okay.
It's a childhood vaccination. So apparently the child regressed into autism and then encephalitis. He also had terrible bowel symptoms, which is why she called him, because there seemed to be some connection there. So they started looking into it, and apparently they found 180 cases that happened to. That became somewhat of the foundation for their research. And what they were doing was correcting, or they were getting some improvement by correcting with diet and anti-inflammatories. So there was this seemed to be this connection with that vaccination, which the pertussis, which is the whooping cough version, when we had an outbreak a number of years ago, and there was more interest in that. But the problem was that the insurance companies would not sell pharmaceutical companies liability insurance.
Oh, okay.
Because the risk was too great, and so that basically led to pharmaceutical companies going to telling the government, look, we can't make these anymore.
They're not going to produce a vaccine if there's no insurance against anything that might go wrong.
Right. And in some cases, if you think about it, that's what the free market is kind of about. If you make a product if you make a car that's not a quality car, people quit buying it. So it's a perfect business model in that there's no incentives to worry about injury. Now that's not to say that they're not concerned about that. Okay, right. I mean, so it's kind of a extraordinary situation. And if you remember the 1976 swine flu pandemic, that was that kind of was one of the things that paved the way for this, along with the pertussis, for this reduction in liability or elimination of it. So it was a similar kind of thing, and that particular we really pushed to get a vaccination for the swine flu, and it was a catastrophe. And there were children paralyzed, a lot of injuries, and so here you have a situation that you're trying to protect.
Well, now let me ask you. You asked the other day. You and I were talking about this, and you were mentioning that mercury is used in what you call a multi-vial dose.
Multi-dose vials.
Multi-dose vials.
Yeah, mercury is in the form of thimerosal. Is a preservative, and so there's a misnomer that a lot of people think that there's no mercury in flu vaccinations, and they're correct on the single dose vials. But if you have a multi-dose vial where you're entering that vial, say 10 times, that there is a preservative in there. The package insert says it's not there as a preservative, but it's part of the manufacturing process, which I don't quite understand that. So what happens with vaccine injury? Of course, there is apparently a gut connection here with that, but you're damaging the nerves, And so what happens is you lose muscle motor control. Some people, they lose control of their muscles. They become weak. And what happens is, if you think about the nerve as being like a pipe,
Right.
and inside the pipe is neurotransmitters,
Yes.
or nerve-related chemicals that conduct that pass information. And the outside of the nerve is something called a myelin sheath.
Myelin. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's a fatty type insulator for the nerve. And so it's been well documented that mercury just causes that myelin sheath to deteriorate. It just goes away. There is some connection with peripheral neuropathy in this type of thing. And the other thing that has a big impact on that is solvents, like petroleum solvents, and people that are working with solvents a lot of times. Later in life, and sometimes earlier, they can get peripheral neuropathy, and is also associated with, of course, diabetes and circulation. But one of the diseases or syndromes that is fairly well known is Guillain-Barre.
Right.
And so it's a rapid onset of muscle weakness. It relates to immune system. And there's another connection here, is that, if you're injecting a vaccination, you're stimulating the immune system. And so, like with the flu vaccination, you may have 4 or 5 different kinds of viruses that that you're getting all at one time. That doesn't necessarily happen in nature. You don't get 5 pathogenic viruses
Right.
At one time. There's a interesting thing about this too, is that it's also associated, Guillain-Barre, sometimes with bacteria or other viruses.
Right.
And so there's a connection there, and it may be that that's a predisposing situation, because everybody's different.
So what you're saying is, and I know this from a personal standpoint, you and I have talked about this, and we're still seeking some answers for my wife, Gina. And this is one of the things we're going down this road possibly but this Guillain-Barre, it can cause muscle weakness.
Yeah, it can cause muscle weakness, spasms. It's you're damaging the peripheral nervous system, basically.
But what you're saying is that it's possible that a vaccine would start the ball rolling. Is that kind of the way a vaccine could start this, could bring about this syndrome?
Guillain-Barre.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of the information you'll read that it's rare with vaccinations.
Right.
I don't think that's the case, because everybody I've talked to that has had this syndrome, and it's kind of interesting because, and maybe I hear about it more because I talk about it, but there's a lot of people that have a lot more than you would think have gotten this. So, which is another situation too, because there's a reporting system for vaccine side effects, and it's estimated that only about 1% of the side effects ever get reported. That could be because there's a disassociation with vaccines. A lot of people don't maybe think that it can be the thing. So healthcare professionals may not recognize it, and certainly individuals may not recognize it.
Wow. Okay.
So, and apparently, with the Guillain-Barre, this can happen within a half a day. Pardon. Or it may take 2 weeks to reach its maximum severity.
Okay, so this could it doesn't happen right away. You can have the vaccine, and then this could be an onset as many as 2 or 3 weeks later.
Right. So yeah. So it's not it's not something that and that would be a reason why people might disassociate it from a medical treatment like a vaccination.
Right. Okay. All right.
So here we, other things. I mean, people can have respiratory failure. They can end up on a vent. It can be life-threatening. You can lose control of your nervous system. Your heart rate might vary. Your blood pressure could vary. Some people experience severe fluctuations in blood pressure.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's a lot of those symptoms are what my wife is going through. So it's kind of what I think. One of the things, Fred, and I think this, I wanted to ask you this too, in a general way. I think it's very frustrating when you have an ailment and you deal with people every week. They're trying to seek solutions, and trying to diagnose what the issue is can be very, very daunting. I mean,
well, and that's where I think we lose a lot in the relationships of cause and effect. And some people would make the argument, well, just because there's an association with it doesn't mean that that's what caused it, which is true. But there's a complete disconnect between cause and effect in medicine, because we mainly deal with symptom relief. The drug application is to stop a symptom, not to look at the underlying cause of the symptom and figuring out how to fix that. So an example is you have a runny nose, so you take an antihistamine. We didn't determine that you had a food allergy that was causing
right.
it. So there's a disconnect with that. So that's kind of how that happens.
Well, I mean, earlier this year, and I've talked to you before, I had never had a complete allergy bank or a panel. All the allergies. They do the little thing on your back, and they see what you're allergic to.
Right.
I had never had that. And then I found out this year I'm extremely allergic to mold and dust. I didn't know that. And I was exhibiting COVID-like symptoms. I was coughing and hacking. Right. But it was because of the allergies. But I didn't know that until I finally got tested.
Right. And so part of that, too, is, your overall health status.
Right.
Because that plays a role in susceptibility and resilience to different diseases. So there are some other connections to the Guillain-Barre. There's some bacteria having the herpes virus, Epstein-Barre, which is an underlying issue with a lot of people, which is the mono virus. Mycoplasma, there's flu viruses, all of these things play roles out. Now, one of the things of what do you do about it?
What do you do if you have GBS?
So we're, of course, there's a depending on the severity of it, you might end up in the hospital. One of the things that may be helpful is adding extra fats, because you're trying to flood the body with the right kind of fats to help your body repair that nerve damage, and that's alpha lipoic acid, which is also used in peripheral neuropathy. Fish oil, DHA, is helpful.
That's what I bought the other day.
Right. BComplex is important for nerve tissue, and I would get the BComplex that's already methylated. What that means is the body can readily use it. It doesn't have to convert it.
Because, I mean, if you get just, and I had to, I mean, too graphic, but when you take some vitamins, they just come right through you. You know, if you don't get ones it's
Well, B vitamins are going to be eliminated in the urine regardless. I mean, you'll see
different
darker color urine. But what happens is there's a genetic predisposition to whether or not you can or cannot metabolize B vitamins.
right.
So it's estimated that 40% of the population has that. So instead of being genetically tested, just go ahead and take the methylated one.
Right.
We also have some homeopathics that may be helpful, with in vaccine support. So that's another thing.
So you're talking about vaccines. I know, and you and I have talked about this before, that we're heading towards the great vaccine, I'm not going to say war or event, because when the vaccine is announced and approved for distribution, because it's in trial. I mean, there's several versions in trial right now for COVID, correct?
Right, and there's also apparently a Chinese version that's already been made and is being promoted.
Oh, I can only imagine. I can only imagine the hoopla that's going to go on.
That makes great sense too. But so we're and that's part of the thing on that the fear issue. We're coming up on decision time. Sometime maybe next year, maybe this year. I don't think it's going to happen this year, but as to whether or not you get the flu vaccination and or get a COVID vaccination, and of course the thing that happens is the mutation of viruses, which is what happens with flu vaccinations.
Well, I heard
with cold vaccination.
Right.
We can't have a cold vaccination to prevent colds because the viruses mutate.
All right. So we're winding down here. Got about 3 minutes left. Some recommendations as we head into fall, Fred, as far as what are some good homeopathics what are you recommending as far as vitamins or homeopathics?
Yeah, I just thought of one other thing that might help with the nerve thing, and it's very helpful with peripheral neuropathy, and that's the CBD oil.
Oh yeah. That's right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because we've had good success with that. Whether or not and all these things we're talking about, I don't have something that says take CBD oil for guillain-barre. I have no idea. That's that's not a. I'm not saying that is the thing to take, but it's the application of the concepts.
But guillain-barre, if you have it, it's chronic. I mean, you have it the rest of your life.
Well, not necessarily. There people do recover from it. I mean, I know a number of people that I know a physician that recovered from it, and yet that individual has some residual impact from it. So, some of this stuff can be reversible to some extent. We don't, you don't know what extent it would be.
But viruses can stay in your system and be dormant for years, even.
But you have to remember it's not necessarily the virus from the flu vaccination that caused the Guillain-Barre. It can be the other components in combination with the stimulation in a negative way of the immune system.
All right. So
there's a lot going on here, and there's a lot of aspects to consider.
That's right. So, but if you want some answers and some, whether you need to rent or borrow, I bought some equipment the other day from you, Fred. Thank you very much. Right. And also got my prescriptions there. So, Lowry Drug on Hartness Road is the place to go, whether you want to go natural homeopathics or traditional pharmaceuticals. And Fred, hope you're gearing up for a good weekend or good week.
Good week, yeah. And keep in mind, I share this information with the with the intent of providing information for people so they can make decisions. You have to make your own decision.
You have to make your decision. So, Fred, stop by and see Fred, and you can ask him. He can give you some great solutions here in downtown Statesville. It's Health Talk on News Talk, WSIC. Hope everybody's having a good week, and we're coming up after the bottom of the hour. We're going to have the town of Troutman. Brian Grusbeck is going to be here, the town manager. So, Fred, have a good week, sir.
You too.
Thank you.